So I recorded the video about Apple doing stuff with activation lock versus parts pairing several times and text. And my voice was good, I feel, along with the website up, but I also feel like a visual can help. Consider subscribing. Right now, this is how the iPhone currently works. It's pretty crude, but I feel like it gives a good representation of what the iPhone is. You have the iPhone as a whole, you have the motherboard, and you have all its components. The motherboard is what is technically activation locked. That piece of that internal component is where all of your information resides. So therefore, when it is locked, that is the thing that you cannot bypass without the user's credentials. Then you have other things like the display, the battery, and the camera. Those things currently are not tied to the user's iCloud account. So therefore, they are not capable of being activation locked. However, they are parts paired to the motherboard. So that's why there's some overlap there. So right now, you have two separate little processes, making it essentially impossible to do anything with an iPhone that isn't currently registered, that isn't currently in use by its original owner or authorized user, I'll say. Now, what Apple wants to propose, or is doing, I don't say what they are going to do, is they're going to get rid of parts pairing. Great. Sounds like a great win for consumers, but they're just going to slide those components over to activation lock. And if you were to go on eBay right now, I feel like that's a great place to look, that there are plenty of phones that are still activation locked and just can't be used. So that trend is going to continue. So now, even though Apple is saying, oh, look, you can now use used iPhone parts in your phone, most of those phones probably are going to be activation locked. So meaning the motherboard won't work, nor will any of the components. So essentially nothing has been done. And I feel like what would make the most sense is fine. Keep your activation lock. Okay, I get why it's there and have that affect the motherboard, but the components don't need to fall in either of these categories. Display, battery, camera are part of the phone, but they are not capable of being tied to somebody's Apple ID, nor are they capable of being tied directly to that particular motherboard without the ease of what Apple is now saying is going to happen about all of that calibration happening on device, which is where it should happen to begin with. So we're not talking about third-party parts right now, because that's not the point of this video. But if we could recap going from left to right, you can see where the current state of the iPhone is, what it's going to look like when Apple implements this later this year, and how I feel like it should actually look. Now, when it comes to activation lock, I completely understand why it exists. I also know that it serves beneficial to Apple to, one, say their devices are secure, and two, make it so that there are less used iPhones available on the market, driving up the price of used iPhones, therefore, keeping the price / kind of pushing up the price of used iPhones, making, and it's good for them. So they can talk all they want about the environment, but this, I feel like, is the epitome of them just being a bunch of bullshitters and not making it easy. Now, when it comes to the activation lock, and this is probably not really the point of this video, but I figured I'd include it. I understand why it exists. In fact, it's good that it exists. If I could activate it, in fact, it's good that it in fact, it is good that it is good that it exists. However, there needs to be some way for these iOS devices to not just become paperweights because they are iCloud or activation locked. Now, if I were to lose my phone or it were to get stolen, what's the most important part of that device? Nothing that Apple has produced. It's the customer data. That's what's most important. That's what I care about. Now that I'm not getting the device back, I want to make sure that people don't get my information. Now, yes, I could be spiteful and be like, okay, well, if I lost my phone or it's stolen, yeah, I want to make sure nobody can use it. Fine, people do, respond that way, and who knows, maybe I would too, I don't know. But from Apple's standpoint, it should be, okay, Our job is to make sure that customer data is secure. So if a person isn't able to provide the necessary credentials to log into a phone that has been reported lost, stolen, whatever, I feel like it should be Apple's job to say, okay, we are going to secure this data by wiping it for the customer. Once we wipe it for the customer, and that could be an automated something, which probably don't want to be automated, but it would be either, yes, the customer does it from their side, the original owner, or if the person who is now in possession of the phone enters the password incorrectly too many times, or if, I don't know, 30 days or 60 days or 90 days, let's say 6 months have passed, and that those credentials haven't properly been logged in or something. Like there could be something that could be done that it says, okay, at this point, we're going to wipe the phone and we're going to disassociate that Apple ID with this phone. And now, yeah, it's unfortunately no longer with the original owner, but it can now at least still be used as a device, as opposed to it being locked and completely incapable of a user actually using it. So here are my three rough visuals of how the iPhone currently works when it comes to activation lock and parts pairing. Yes, I feel like the third one is the optimal way to go, but I also feel like the way that activation lock is implemented needs to be changed. One, to benefit the customer, and two, since Apple claims to be such eco-friendly and all about the environment, let's keep these devices in circulation. Let's allow users to continue using them instead of them being locked and completely unusable, or being locked completely unusable and the parts can't be used because now the parts are paired to the original customer's Apple ID. So at the beginning of the video, I might have said it, might not have. I know when I had the Verge up, on the screen, I essentially said nothing is going to change. We're just shifting, or Apple is just shifting what they're calling it. So these little components are no longer paired to the motherboard, but they are paired to your Apple ID. So parts pairing is still a thing. It's just not paired to the motherboard. And I feel like this was a complete bunch of bullshit. And I hate when news reporters don't actually call out what companies are doing when it's something like this. I did actually read through the comments, and yeah, some people are realizing, like, wait a minute, what's like, yeah, you're reducing the restriction of parts pairing, but you're increasing the restriction when it comes to activation lock. So nothing is really changing, and we'll see that. And I know I said it when the Verge text was up in the background, the fact that it's only for iPhone 15s and later means that there are billions of iOS and iPadOS devices that this will not impact. So, full of shit, Apple. Absolutely full of shit. And the little email blurb quote from John, whatever his last name was, full of shit. And I know I make these videos, even though, yeah, I am part of the problem, but I also, make it clear that Android is my primary operating system, or for my phone. I do have a Mac, but I also have Windows PCs. And yeah, Apple just does a bunch of anti-consumer, and Apple displays a lot of anti-consumer behaviors, anti-environment behaviors, and probably just a bunch of other things that are anti-everybody except for their shareholders and their C-suite employees. So keep that in mind. Bunch of bullshit, Apple. Absolute bunch of bullshit.